Good morning, students. Hope you all are fit and fine. Students, from today we will start the first chapter of our English book Honeydew. Lesson 1. The name of the chapter is The Best Christmas Present in the World. Author is Michael Morpurgo. About the author. Michael Morpurgo is an award-winning English author, poet, playwright and best known for children's novels like Warhorse, The Amazing Story of Adolphus Tips, etc. Here children, I want to tell you one thing. Read books daily. The books of your interest. Save at least half an hour for reading because if you want to enhance your imagination power, your writing skill, reading books is very helpful. Before starting the chapter, let's go through the summary of the chapter. The Best Christmas Present in the World is a story written by Michael Morpurgo. In this story, the author bought a roll-top table from a junk shop. It was in worse condition and he started to work on it. On Christmas Eve, he found a letter in its drawer. It was a letter of a husband for his wife. Author decided to give this letter to Jim's wife back. Now what happens? Next we will read in the chapter. Before reading the chapter, before reading the story, let's go through the characters, the main characters of this story. Jim Macpherson, British soldier, was a school teacher. Connie Macpherson, Jim's wife. Hans Wolf, German Fritz. At Dusseldorf, he played cello in orchestra. Here the chapter begins. There are some dates or period of time in the history of the world that are so significant that everyone knows and remembers them. The story you will read mentions one such date, an event in a war between the British and the Germans in 1914. Can you guess which war it was? Yes, it was World War I. Do you know which events and dates below refer to? 4th July 1776, American Declaration of Independence. 17 December 1903, Wilbur and Orville Wright brothers met the first flight remaining in the air for 12 seconds covering 120 feet. 6 August 1945, Hiroshima Day. 30th Jan 1948, assassination of Mahatma Gandhi. 12th April 1961, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to orbit the Earth. 20th July 1969, Neil Armstrong became the first human to set his foot on the moon. Here the first part of the chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World. I spotted it in a junk shop in Bridport, a roll-top desk. The man said it was early 19th century and oak. I had wanted one, but they were far too expensive. This one was in bad condition. The roll-top in several pieces. One leg clumsily mended, scratch marks all down one side. It was going for a very little money. I thought I could restore it. It would be a risk, a challenge. But I had to have it. I paid the man and brought it back to my workroom at the back of the garage. I began work on it on Christmas Eve. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. The veneer had lifted almost everywhere. Students, here are some hard words. Spotted. Spotted means saw it. Scratch marks, burn marks. Restore, repair. And veneer, it is a thin layer of plastic or decorative wood on the furniture of cheap wood. What these carpenters do, they polish with veneer and they make cheap wood furniture look expensive. I spotted. I here is the narrator who is telling us the story of whom? Jim Macpherson, Connie Macpherson and Hans Wolf. I spotted in a junk shop. The narrator went to a junk shop. Junk shop is the shop where antique items are sold. I saw there, I went to purchase a roll top desk. Narrator want to purchase a roll top desk. The man said, the man here is the shopkeeper. The shopkeeper said that this roll top desk is of 19th century because this is a junk shop and where antique items are found, sold, and it is made up of oak. Oak is a tree of hardwood, and the furniture made by oak is very expensive. I had wanted one, but narrator made his mind to purchase at least one roll top desk. But they were far too expensive. But what he was thinking that I will not be able to purchase because these desks are very expensive. This one was in bad condition. Then he saw that there was one roll top desk and that desk was not in good condition. What the condition was? The roll top in several pieces, one leg clumsily mended, scratch marks all down one side. That roll top desk was not in good condition. It was broken into several pieces. One leg was also mended, and the scratch marks, the burn marks were also seen on that roll top desk. It was going for very little money. And that shopkeeper said that he will sell that roll top desk which was not in good condition in very little money. I thought I could restore it. Now what narrator thought? That I will repair this roll top. It would be a risk, a challenge. Now there was a question mark in his mind that maybe I will able to restore it, I will able to repair it or not. It is a risk and it is a challenge. But I had to have it. But I need it and I want it and I had to have this. I paid the man. At last, what narrator did? He paid the man and brought it back to his workroom, and where his workroom was at the back of the garage, and I began work on it on Christmas Eve. Christmas Eve, we celebrate Christmas on 25th of December, and the evening before this day is called the evening of Christmas, Christmas Eve. That means the evening of 24th December. I removed the roll top completely and pulled out the drawers. Now he started repairing it, and the veneer had lifted almost everywhere, and he removed all the polish from that roll top desk. It looked like water damage to me. Both fire and water had clearly taken their toll on this desk. The last drawer was stuck fast. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. In the end, I used brute force. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist, and the drawer flew open to reveal a shallow space underneath a secret drawer. There was something in there. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Sellotaped to the top of it was a piece of lined note paper, and written on it in shaky handwriting, Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915. To be buried with me when the time comes. I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box. But curiosity got the better of my scalps. It usually does. Inside the box there was an envelope. The address read, Mrs. Jim MacPherson, 12 Cooper Beeches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter and unfolded it. It was written in pencil and dated at the top, December 26, 1914. Now what happened, students, as he started repairing that roll top desk, he saw that it looked like water damage to me. He saw that the roll top desk was damaged by water and fire both. Why water and fire? Maybe some incident there in Connie's house and it was burned. So author was just guessing that the symptoms are that this roll top desk was looking that is damaged by water and fire. Taken their toll. Here again the hard words. Taken their toll on means damaged. Stuck fast means shut tightly. And scalps means feeling that make you hesitate to do something wrong. The last drawer was stuck fast, and when he was repairing that roll top desk, the last drawer was stuck fast, was shut tight. I tried all I could to ease it out gently. He did all efforts to take it out gently. But in the end, I used brute force at last. At the end, narrator used all the brute force. I struck it sharply with the side of my fist and the drawer flew open, to reveal a shallow space underneath. Underneath means it is a preposition here, and preposition that below the surface is called underneath. What was there? There was a secret drawer again. There was something in there, and in that secret drawer, there was something there. I reached in and took out a small black tin box. Reached in means I put my hand inside and took out a small black tin box. What was there in that secret drawer? There was a small black tin box. Sellotaped to the top. And what was sellotaped stuck to that small black tin box? There was a piece of lined note paper. And what was written? It was written Jim's last letter, received January 25, 1915. And it was written in shaky handwriting, not in good handwriting. When you're not feeling good and your hands are shaking, then you write whatever you write, that handwriting. In shaky handwriting, it was Jim's last letter. And when it was received on January 25th, 1915. To be buried with me when the time comes. And who wrote this letter? This letter was written by Jim McPherson. And to whom? To his wife, Connie McPherson. And what his wife wants, that this letter should be buried with her when she died. The time comes mean the end time, when she died. I knew as I did it that it was wrong of me to open the box, but curiosity got the better of my scalps. Now, scalps means the feeling of hesitation when you do something wrong. So, what the author was feeling, that why he was feeling scalps, why he was not feeling good, because students, to see someone personal things is not good habit, and he was hesitating. As I told you before also, that hesitation comes when you do something wrong. Even if we speak lie, Alexa, shivering, and our voice is also shivering. We are uncomfortable when we are doing something wrong, and inner voice comes, don't do it, it is wrong. But then here also, this narrator is not feeling good. He said that it is wrong to open someone's personal letter, but curiosity got the better of my scalps. It usually does. As the curiosity always wins, so I have curiosity. And why curiosity? Narrator has to open the letter because he had purchased the roll-top desk and he has to open the letter to know what is there in it. Inside the box, there was an envelope. Now what he saw, that inside the box also there was an envelope. And the address read, Mrs. Jim McPherson, 12 Cooper Beaches, Bridport, Dorset. I took out the letter. Then the narrator took out the letter and then he unfolded it. It was written in pencil. That letter was written in pencil and dated at the top December 26, 1914. On which date the letter was written? December 26, 1914. So here students, we have done 2 paragraphs today, and the summary of the paragraph is that the narrator bought a roll-top table, started repairing it. He found a black tin box in the secret drawer. He found one envelope there. Address was written. He found a letter in that envelope, and the letter was written by Jim McPherson to his wife Connie McPherson. On which date it was written? It was written on December 26, 1914. Now what was written in that letter, that we will read in our next period. Thank you. Have a nice day, students. Good morning, dear students. Hope you all are fit and fine. Yesterday we have started the chapter The Best Christmas Present in the World. The summary of the chapter is that the narrator of the story bought a roll-top desk and he found in the secret drawer of that desk, when he was repairing that desk, he found a black tin box with a letter in that box. He unfolded the envelope, he opened the letter. The letter was written by Jim McPherson to his wife Connie McPherson. He started reading the letter, and what was there written in the letter we will read today. Here is the letter written by Jim McPherson to his wife Connie McPherson, and narrator is reading this letter. I write to you in a much happier frame of mind because something wonderful has just happened that I must tell you about at once. In these lines, narrator is reading the letter, and Jim McPherson has wrote that, Connie, I want to share with you my most happier feeling when I was there in war. I want to share with you my happier feeling. We were all standing in our trenches yesterday morning. Christmas morning. It was crisp and quiet all about. As beautiful a morning as I've ever seen, as cold and frosty as a Christmas morning should be. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, but the truth, I am ashamed to say, is that Fritz began it. First, someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land. Happy Christmas, Tommy, Happy Christmas. When we had got over the surprise, some of us shouted back. So in these lines, students, McPherson has written that, Dear Connie, I want to share with you the most happiest feeling of mine when I was there in war. What happened? He says that we were all standing, the troop of the army, the British soldiers, they were all standing in their trenches. We dug the ground. For the soldiers, they dug the ground to hide themselves by enemy. And the Christmas morning, and it was crisp and quiet all. And the Christmas morning, as you all know, students, in December, it's very cold and frosty, and it was very crisp and quiet, as a Christmas morning should be. I should like to be able to tell you that we began it, and these Britishers were just going to begin it, but the truth, I am ashamed. But the truth is different. I am ashamed. Before we start, these German Fritz began it, and the first someone saw a white flag waving from the trenches opposite. And the trenches from the opposite side, the German soldiers, we saw one soldier was waving a white flag. Do you know, students, waving a white flag means a symbol of peace. Then they were calling out to us from across no man's land. No man's land, students, the place of war. Happy Christmas, Tommy, Happy Christmas. When we had got over the surprise. Now these British soldiers were in surprise. Why? They were in surprise because this is the no man's land. They were there for war. And what happened? They saw that these Germans were waving a white flag and even wishing them Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas. They all were surprised. But some of us shouted back, and some of the British soldiers shouted back, Merry Christmas, Happy Christmas. Same to you, Fritz, same to you. Fritz. Fritz means German soldier. This is the word used for German soldiers. I thought that would be that. We all did. But then suddenly one of them was up there in his grey great coat, waving a white flag. Don't shoot, lads, someone shouted. And no one did then. There was another Fritz up on the parapet, and another. Keep your heads down, I told the man. It's a trick. But it wasn't. One of the German was waving a bottle above his head. It's a Christmas day, Tommy. We have schnapps, we have sauces, we meet you. Yes. By this time, there were a dozen of them walking towards us across no man's land, and not a rifle between them. Same to you, Fritz, same to you. I thought that would be that. Okay, they wished again. Okay, same to you, Fritz, same to you. We all did. We wished them again. But then suddenly one of them was up there. But what these soldiers, McPherson, British soldiers saw, that there was one great coat waving a white flag up there, and was ordering to the soldiers, don't shoot, lads, don't shoot. Someone shouted not to shoot, and no one did. Then there was another Fritz up. Another Fritz German soldier came up on the parapet. Parapet means a wall, small wall. And another, one by one, they were coming up there. Keep your heads down. The instruction was, keep your heads down. I told the man, it is a trick. What McPherson instruct to the British soldiers, keep your heads down. Maybe it is a trick. But it wasn't, Connie. It wasn't a trick. That's why this McPherson was feeling ashamed. Okay. But it wasn't. One of the German was waving a bottle above his head. It is a Christmas day, Tommy. We have Schnapps. Schnapps, it is a drink, German drink. We have sausage, cookies and cakes. We meet you. Yes, what these German Fritz were saying. Okay, we want to meet you. We want to celebrate Christmas. By this time, there were dozen of them. Now, one by one, they were in number of dozen and they were walking towards us across no man's land. No man's land in the place of war and not a rifle between them. They were moving towards us without rifles. Little Private Morris was the first up. Little Private Morris is the name of the soldier. Come on, boys, what are we waiting for? And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose, but the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. All along their line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another. Grey coats, khaki coats, meeting in the middle. And I was one of them. I was part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of the Fritz officer, who approached me, hand outstretched. Hans Wolf, he said, gripping my hand warmly and holding it. I am from Dusseldorf. I play a cello in the orchestra. Happy Christmas. Now what happened, students, when they moved in a number of soldiers, German Fritz, towards whom? Towards the British soldiers, wishing them Merry Christmas with the sauces and with schnapps. They want to celebrate Christmas with these soldiers. Now what happens? Little Private Morris, one of the character from that troop, come on boys, what are we waiting for? What are you waiting for? And then there was no stopping them. I was the officer. Jim McPherson was the officer. I should have stopped them. What he's saying that I should have stopped them there and then, I suppose. But the truth is that it never even occurred to me I should. But I was not able to stop them. All along their line and ours, I could see men walking slowly towards one another. And Connie, what I could see, that men walking, two armies, one German Fritz and another one was British soldier. They were walking towards one another. Grey coats with Germans, and khaki coats, British soldiers. They were meeting in the middle of that war place. And I was one of them. And Connie, even I was one of them. I was a part of this. In the middle of the war, we were making peace. What these soldiers were doing, instead of making war, they were making peace. You cannot imagine, dearest Connie, my feelings as I looked into the eyes of Fritz officer. Now McPherson says that you cannot imagine, Connie, when I looked into the eyes of one Fritz officer, one German officer, who came and approached me, met with me, and what he did, he outstretched. Hans Wolf, what he said, I am Hans Wolf, he said. Here, students, Hans Wolf is the third character. First main character, Jim McPherson, then Connie McPherson, Jim's wife, and now Hans Wolf. He said, while shaking hands, he said, gripping my hands warmly and holding it, I am from Dusseldorf. From where Hans Wolf was? He was from Dusseldorf. I play a cello in the orchestra. Then he said, he was introducing himself to whom? To Jim McPherson. He said that I play cello, C-E-L-L-O. It is cello in orchestra, and he wished Happy Christmas. So students, further the story we will read in our next period. Thank you. Good morning, students. Nice to see you again. Today we will start part 3 of our first chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World. Till today we have read that the narrator bought a roll-top desk. He started repairing that roll-top desk. He found a letter in the secret drawer, and the letter was written by Jim McPherson to his wife Connie McPherson. The narrator unfolded that letter and started reading that letter. That letter was written with pencil, and it was written on 16 December. Jim McPherson wrote to his wife that I want to share with you my happiest feeling when I am here in no man land place. And the two armies, the British and German armies, instead of fighting here in the war place, we were celebrating Christmas. And then what happens? The Jim McPherson met to an German Fritz. The name of German Fritz was Hans Wolf. Hans Wolf introduced to Jim McPherson that he was a cello player, artist of cello player. Cello is an musical instrument, and from Dorset. Then what happens? We will read today. Captain Jim McPherson, I replied, and a happy Christmas to you too. I'm a school teacher from Dorset in the west of England. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. Now, when Hans Wolf introduced himself to McPherson, Jim McPherson, then Jim McPherson introduced himself. What he said? I am Captain Jim McPherson and I am from Dorset in the west of England. And a very happy Christmas to you too, Hans. Ah, Dorset, he smiled. Who smiled? Hans. I know this place. I know it very well. We shared my rum ration and his excellent sauces. And then, after introducing to each other, then they were friends now, and then they share their rations of rum and their sauces, their cookies, their cakes. And we talked, Connie. How we talked? Now here Jim McPherson is explaining that how we talked to each other. He spoke almost perfect English. He here refers to whom? To Hans Wolf. Hans Wolf spoke almost perfect English, but it turned out that he had never set foot in Dorset. He had never gone to Dorset, never even been to England. But Connie still, he can speak English very well. He had learned all he knew of England from school and from reading books in England. Then, Connie, I was surprised that Hans Wolf, who spoke a very good English, and surprisingly that he had never set foot in Dorset and never even been to England. After that also, he was good in English. How? He had learned all he knew of England from school. From where he learned such type of good English? He learned it from school and from reading books in English. That's why, student, I tell you again and again that reading will make you perfect. It is very necessary to read books because here the character of the story, Hans Wolf, also good at reading and good in reading, and that's why he was able to speak such good English. His favorite writer was Thomas Hardy. His favorite book, Far from the Madding Crowd. So out there in no man's land, we talked at Bathsheba and Gabriel Oak and Sergeant, Troy and Dorset. He had a wife and one son, born just 6 months ago. Hans Wolf. As I looked about me, there were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere. Now what McPherson is telling, he is telling that Hans Wolf has wife and a son. 6 months ago, he had a son. As I looked about me, there were huddles. Huddles means groups. There were huddles of khaki and grey everywhere. Khaki, the British army, and the grey is for Germans. All over no man's land. No man's land means the war place. Smoking, laughing, talking, drinking, eating. And Connie, I was surprised, and you will also be surprised that at this war place, instead of the gunshot boys, we all were. The war place was, this no man's land was smoking. It was full of smoke, laughing, talking, drinking and eating. Hans Wolf and I shared what was left of your wonderful Christmas cake, Connie. Then what McPherson is saying that Connie, I shared the cake you sent to me. I shared it with Hans Wolf. He thought the marzipan was the best he had ever tasted. Marzipan is a type of cake. I agreed, we agreed about everything, and he was my enemy. And you would wonder, Connie, that he was my enemy and we were celebrating Christmas. They are eating cake together. There never was a Christmas party like it, Connie. Why? Because two enemies were celebrating Christmas together. Then someone I don't know who bought out a football. Great coats were dumped in piles to make goal post. Now someone from the troop only, they bought a football and they started making goal spots to play football. And the next thing we knew was Tommy against Fritz out in the stamping of feet. In the middle of no man's land, Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, clapping our hands and stamping our feet. Now what happens? Someone bought out a football, great coats were dumped and goal posts were made. And the next thing we knew that Tommy here refers to British, Fritz, and Fritz here refers to German soldiers. Tommy, British soldiers, and Fritz, German soldiers. Out in the middle of no man's land, in that war place, Hans Wolf and I looked on and cheered, and we were feeling very happy, clapping our hands and stamping our feet to keep out the cold as much as anything. Now they are doing warm up. There was a moment when I noticed our breaths mingling in the air between us. Mingling means mixing. Now what he noticed? He noticed that the breathing that was mingling in the air. This is very beautiful, written by the author here, students, that what the narrator wants to say, what this Jim McPherson wants to say, his wife Connie McPherson, a great thing that how our breathing were mingling in the air. This line shows the peace of these people between us. He saw us too and smiled, and even Hans noticed it and smiled. Jim McPherson, he said after a while. And after a while, Hans said to Jim McPherson, I think is how we should resolve this war. Resolve means to solve this war, to end this war. A football match. What Hans Wolf said, that we can end this war by this football match. Why he said this? No one dies in a football match. No children are orphaned. No wives become widows. I'd prefer cricket, I told him. Why Hans Wolf said that this football is a good solution to end this war, students? Because he said that because of football playing, no one dies. And no children are orphaned. And no wives become widows. Because all these things happen when there is a war. And to end this war, football is the best solution, as Hans Wolf said. But what Jim McPherson said? I prefer cricket, I told him. Connie, I told him that I prefer cricket. Then we Tommies here again. Tommies refers to British soldiers. Could be sure of winning probably. Then we laughed at that and together we watched the game. But it is very sad to say. What is sad to say, Connie? Fritz won 2-1. And Fritz won 2-1. Who won the match? Fritz. But as Hans Wolf generously said, our goal was wider than theirs. No, it wasn't quite fair. Fritz won 2-1. And then that Hans Wolf said, no, it's not fair. Our goal spot was wider. The time came, and all too soon, when the game was finished. And then at last the game was finished. The schnapps and the rum and the sauces had long since run out, and they all were also over. The cookies they were eating, the schnapps they were sharing, the drink, schnapps is a type of German drink, and the sausage they were sharing with each other. They also since ran out, they were also finished. And we knew it was all over. I wished Hans well and told him I hoped he would see his family again soon. Then I wished Hans Wolf and I told him, Connie, that I wished him that he would see his family again soon. That the fighting would end and we could all go home. Now, what Jim McPherson is hoping for? He is hoping for good, that Hans Wolf, I wish that you would see your family again soon, and as the war ends we will all could able to go home. I think that is what every soldier wants. Yes, students, every soldier wants that war ends and they want to come back home. On both sides, German and British. Hans Wall said, Take care, Jim McPherson. Now he is going. He said, Take care, Jim McPherson. I shall never forget this moment, nor you. What he said, that I will never forget this moment, I shall never forget, and nor you. He saluted and walked away from me slowly, unwillingly, I felt. And what Jim felt? That he saluted me and walked away from me very slowly and unwillingly, as he was pretending that he was not agreed to go from there. He don't want to go from there. So he moved from there very slowly and unwillingly, as I felt. He turned to wave just once. He turned to wave me just once and then became one of the 100 of grey-coated men drifted back toward their trenches. Once he turned to me, he waved me once again, and then he was in that trenches with the grey-coated, with the Germans there, and then they moved back towards their trenches. That night, back in our dugouts. What are dugouts? Dugouts, the same thing where these soldiers live. They keep themselves safe. They dug the ground there and hide themselves. We heard them singing a carol and singing it quite beautifully. Carol are the songs. Okay, and Christian sings these carols on Christmas and singing it quite beautifully. It was Shell Nesh's Silent Night. You also have a Silent Night, Holy Night. Our boys gave them a rousing chorus of Wild Shepherds Watched. And now what they did? They also started singing carol, and our boys also sang Wild Shepherd Watched. We exchanged carols for a while and then we all felt silent. They also started singing, they exchanged their carols, and then after a few while they all felt silent. We had a time of peace and goodwill. It was a time of peace and goodwill. We celebrated Christmas there. A time I will treasure as long as I live. Now what Jim McPherson is writing in his letter to his wife, that this time was a treasure to me, a very, very valuable for me, and I will treasure it as long as I live. Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but a distant and terrible memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. We shall be together again soon, I'm sure of it. Your loving, Jim. Now in the end of the letter, what he writes, Dearest Connie, by Christmas time next year, this war will be nothing but what? Only a memory. I know from all that happened today how much both armies long for peace. But today was a wonderful day. It was unforgettable Christmas celebration. How the both armies were praying and they were making peace with each other. We shall be together again soon, and then we shall be together again soon. We shall, Connie and Jim. I am sure of it. I'll be back soon home. I am sure of it, Connie. Your loving Jim. Your loving husband, Jim. So here, student, end of the chapter, The Best Christmas Present, part 3. Part 4 is still remaining. We will continue in the next period. Thank you. Good morning, students. Welcome to the part 4 of the chapter, The Best Christmas Present in the World. The first three part we have read that the narrator of this story bought a roll-top desk and he found an envelope in a black tin box in the secret drawer of that roll-top desk when he was repairing it. And what was there? There was a letter. There was a letter in the envelope written by Jim McPherson to his beloved wife Connie McPherson. And even narrator started reading that letter, and in that letter Jim McPherson shared his good feelings, wonderful feelings with his wife Connie McPherson, where they were for war with Germans. And the wonderful thing happens that they all, the British and the Germans, were celebrating Christmas together there in the no man's land place. Okay, so students, Jim McPherson shared these feelings, and there he says that he met German Fritz Hans Wolf and they were in friendship. At last, Jim McPherson says that I'll be soon back home, Connie, and it was really a wonderful Christmas celebration where in the war place we all were celebrating Christmas. Now, what happened? The narrator folded that letter and now he was in search of Connie McPherson to give Connie this letter as a best Christmas present. Now, what happens? Let's read. I folded the letter again and slipped it carefully back into its envelope. I kept awake all night. By morning, I knew what I had to do. I drove it into Bridport, just a few miles away. I asked a boy walking his dog where Copper Beeches were. House number 12 turned out to be nothing but a burnt out shell, the roof gaping, the windows boarded up. I knocked at the house next door and asked if anyone knew the whereabouts of a Mrs. McPherson. Oh, yes, said the old man in his slippers. He knew her well, a lovely old lady, he told me. A bit muddle-headed, but at her age she was entitled to be. Wasn't she? 101 years old. She had been in the house when it caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started, but it could well have been candles. She used candles rather than electricity because she always thought electricity was too expensive. The fireman had got her out just in time. She was in a nursing home now, he told me. Burlington House on the Dorchester Road on the other side of town. So students, I here refers to narrator. Narrator folded that letter and now next morning, he was not able to sleep all night. Next morning, he went to Bridport, a few miles away from a house, and he asked a boy in that morning who was walking with his dog where Cooper Beeches was and the house number 12. The house number 12 is the house of Connie McPherson. But what he saw, that house number 12 was just a burned out shell. Nothing remains there, the roof gaping and the windows boarded up. Then what the narrator did, I knocked at the house. He knocked to the neighbors and he asked that if anyone knows about Mrs. McPherson. There came an old man with slippers and he said that he knew Mrs. McPherson very well, that lovely old lady. But what he said, that muddle-headed but confused. Muddle-headed means confused because she was at the age of 101 years. She had been in the house when it caught fire. That old man said that Connie McPherson was in the house when the house caught fire. No one really knew how the fire had started. No one knows how house caught fire. But it could well have been candles. Now the old man is telling to narrator that because of candles maybe house caught fire. Because Connie McPherson used candles to light the house instead of using electricity. Why? Because Connie McPherson thinks that electricity was too expensive. Then the fireman came and got her out just in time. She was saved. And now where is Connie McPherson? She was in nursing home and he told me Burlington House. The address of nursing home, Burlington House, Dorchester Road, on the other side of the town. Now the narrator went to the nursing home. I found Burlington House nursing home very easily enough. There were paper chains up in the hallway and lighted candles. Trees stood in the corner with a lopsided angle on top. Now, because that was the day of Christmas, that's why this nursing home was also decorated with the paper chains, the buntings we used on birthday and all. And till the hallway it was lighted. Christmas tree stood in the corner, a lopsided angle on the top. I said I was a friend come to visit Mrs. McPherson to bring her a Christmas present. Then narrator went to reception and he introduced himself that he is a friend of Mrs. McPherson and he is here to give her a Christmas present. I could see through into a dining room where everyone was wearing a paper hat and singing. Then narrator saw into the dining room of that nursing home that everyone was wearing paper hats. As we used to wear paper hats on birthdays, they were also wearing paper hat and they all were singing. It means they all were celebrating Christmas because that was the date of 25th December. The matron who looks after all that hospital nursing home, the matron had a hat on too and seemed happy enough to see me. The matron, when he saw someone has come to meet Connie McPherson, she was very happy. Why she was happy? Let's see. She even offered me a mince pie, a cookies, name of a cookie. She walked me along the corridor. And what she said, Mrs. McPherson is not in with the others. She said that in this dining hall, Mrs. McPherson is not there. She told me she is rather confused today, so we thought it best if she had a good rest. Then matron said that Mrs. McPherson was rather confused today. That's why these matron and doctors thought that let her give her good rest. She has no family, you know. Now matron is telling to narrator. She has no family. No one visits to Connie. So I am sure she'll be only too pleased to see you. So when he introduced that he is friend of Connie McPherson, matron is telling that I am sure she will be very pleased to see you. She took me into a conservatory with wicker chairs and potted plants all around and left me. She took me to the conservatory ward and with wicker chairs, with the sticks and potted plants all around and left me. The furniture made up of thin sticks were all decorated there. Plants were there, pot of plants were there all around, and then he left me there in conservatory. The old lady was sitting in a wheelchair, her hands folded in her laps. What the narrator saw, that old lady was sitting on the wheelchair with folded hands. She had silver white hair pinned into a wispy bun. She had a silver white hair pin into wispy bun. She was gazing out at the garden, and that she was staring out at the garden. Then narrator started, "Hello," I said. Narrator said, "Hello." She turned and look up at me vacantly. Now she turned gently and looked up at me vacantly. Vacantly means without any expressions in eyes. "Happy Christmas, Connie," I went on. And narrator said, "Happy Christmas, Connie. I found this. I think it's yours." Then showing that black tin box, narrator said, "I found this and I think it's yours." As I was speaking, her eyes never left my face. Here, narrator is explaining very beautifully that when I was speaking, Connie's eyes never left my face. He was just gazing, staring on my face without any movement in eyes. With recognition, and her face became suffused with a sudden glow of happiness. And after a few minutes, her face was glowing. I explained about the desk. about how I found it, but I don't think she was listening. Then narrator started explaining how he found that letter, but narrator said that I can say that she was not listening anything. For a while, she said nothing, but stroked the letter tenderly with her fingertips, but took the letter very kindly and held it tightly. Suddenly, she reached out and took my hand, and suddenly she holded my hand. Her eyes were filled with tears, and Mrs. Connie started crying. You told me you had come home by Christmas, dearest, she said. Connie said that you told me that you will come home by Christmas. And here you are, the best Christmas present in the world. And what Connie said by holding the hand of narrator, and here you are, and this is the best Christmas present in the world. Come closer, Jim dear, sit down. See the feeling of Connie. She was waiting for her husband, Jim McPherson. And when she saw someone with letter, she thought that the narrator is her husband. So he hold his hand, and what she said, come closer, Jim, and sit down near me. I sat down beside her, and narrator, without giving any expression, without any reactions, he just sat down beside her, and she kissed my cheek. I read your letter so often, Jim. Now, what Connie is thinking, that this narrator is Jim, her husband, and she said that I read your letter so often. So often means again and again, every day. I wanted to hear your voice in my head. I want your letter, your voice, what you have written in my head, in my memory again and again. I wanted to recall it. It always made me feel you were with me, and it always made me feel confident that you were with me always. And now you are, and now here you are. Now you are back. You can read it to me yourself. Now what Connie said to narrator, she was thinking that he is Jim. He said that now you are back and read this letter for me. Would you do that for me, Jim dear? Because she is an old lady of 101 years and lost her memory, maybe. Anna, that's why she is telling narrator that now, Jim, please read this letter for me. I just want to hear your voice again. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea. And when you will read this letter for me, because I want to hear your lovely voice, I'm just waiting. You told me that you will back on Christmas, by the Christmas, and today is Christmas, and this is the best Christmas present for me. I love that Christmas cake. I'd love that so much. And then perhaps we'll have some tea, and after that we will have some tea. I've made you a nice Christmas cake marzipan all around, and I have made a nice Christmas cake marzipan all around. I know how much you love marzipan. I know how much you love marzipan. So students, here the chapter ended, and the best Christmas present Connie McPherson got was the letter written by his husband, and the narrator gave the letter as a Christmas present to Connie McPherson. What moral we get from the story, students? That world would be much better if the problems were resolved by football match or any other thing instead of war. Because war brings death and sadness, and there are much better other ways to resolve differences. So students, here is the end of the chapter. Revise it. Thank you.